Hey everybody, hope you're having an awesome day today. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at another piece of film music, this one again by John Williams. And for ScoreTalk episode 2, we're going to be looking at Schindler's List, the main theme. So it's a gorgeous piece of music, one of the only pieces of music I've heard Williams write in a very sad and somber tone, especially in kind of a context like this, right? So it's a really nice. We're going to go through the form, the musical theory, the harmony, melody, a little bit about the orchestration as well. So let's just dive right in. What we'll do is we'll kind of listen to a little bit of it first, and then we'll discuss each section of it. So let's just play the intro, maybe the first theme, and then we'll talk about the analysis. Here we go. Okay, cool. Let's just go over this a little bit here. So I kind of made a document talking about each of the little things that we should consider. So this is a little bit of an overview. And the first thing I wanted to write down was basically the structure of the piece, because it really is so important in understanding the form and the structure of each piece of music and how it all works together. So A is basically the main theme. And this actually repeats up an octave to bring out the really expressive qualities of the violin. And then we get this kind of a short development section. It goes into C, the C section. I'm calling it a C section, even though it's pretty connected to the B. But the C section is kind of like a more slightly playful version of the A section. It's an A minor, which basically leads us back into the main theme, but it stays in A minor for the rest of the piece. So it starts off in D minor, which is a very sad key. And D minor, if you know your circle of fifths, has one flat, which is B flat. And so all the other notes in the scale are white. We only have one flat. So when we get to the A minor in the middle of the piece and go with A minor until the very end, it's a very easy transition, and those keys are very closely related together. So John Williams did a very seamless job going from one key to the other. And in terms of the instrumentation, it's quite lush. So, of course, we have the solo violin doing the melody. Then we have the background, support, the harmony, which is mainly strings and woodwinds. And then you also have the harp, which is actually a very prominent instrument in this piece, because it all has this kind of, it has this timbre that kind of tugs at your heart. Ding, 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 just like the plucking sound is something that's quite indescribable. You kind of have to hear it to see what I mean. But let's get into the melody now. So I kind of wrote down the solo violin has a very pining and a passionate quality, almost like crying. And even from the very beginning, the amount of vibrato that the violinist is using is very expressive and very passionate. So let's just hear that a little bit. Especially that C there, do, do. And especially because this is such a large interval, I think this is something I mentioned. Yes, so the melody is mainly eighth notes, by the way. So rhythmically, it's not that diverse, which makes the intervals or the note choices that Williams is using very, very important, because rhythmically, it's not that complex. So he has to use very strong intervals in order to convey the emotion that he's going for. So he goes, we get this perfect fifth pattern a little bit here in the melody. We start on A, which goes down to D, which is the tonic, and then back up to A to D. So then you get this minor sixth to the B flat, resolves to the A, which is our stable note. And then, now this resolution to the A we'll discuss in just a second, but it works super well. So I'm just wrote here the use of intervals are very strong, and the reason I mentioned that is in the melody here. In the second time this comes in, then we get this up to the C. So this is a minor seventh from the D up to a C. So right, and there's a bit of a pull there, a bit of a stretch of time. So we call this rubato in classical music, where you take a slight bit of time and then you give that time back a little bit later. So you slow down a touch before playing that, and then it speeds up just a little bit to return that time. And again, we have a large interval, so do 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 do. You know, that up to that B flat is super important, and then. And generally at the end of a phrase, end of a musical phrase, we take just a little bit of time to kind of say, okay, we're settling back into the end of the sentence there. So, you know, you take a bit of time to signify that. We don't want to rush anything, especially in a piece like this. So I wrote here, there's always a strong sense of resolution to the stable notes. So even in that first theme here, so right now I'm playing an F major chord, and this melody note is an A. So the stable notes of an F major scale, for example, would be F, A, and C. The first, third, and fifth of any scale are considered the stable notes. So every single phrase that Williams writes in the melody, it ends on a stable degree of whatever chord he's playing, or whatever chord is underneath. So it's super effective there, and it makes us feel very comfortable and, you know, I don't want to say predictable, but it's something we can expect, and we're not surprised by that, right? Cool. Okay, let's move on here to the chord progression a little bit. So this is kind of where all the meat and potatoes of everything is, because like we said, the melody is super important, and those intervals really make that difference, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But the harmonic language is so beautiful here, and especially these 2-5-1s I want to discuss a little bit. So let's just hear the intro first, one more time. So in general, you can hear an A on the very bottom. Da, da. So the English horn on the top there is kind of, I would say the English horn is kind of playing on top of that. Da, 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 da. It starts on an E, which is a dominant of the A minor chord, which is a stable degree, right? So it starts off comfortable, it drops down to the fourth, E, D, and then rises up above the E. So it goes to the sixth of the scale, and then it comes back down to the fifth. So fifth, fourth, six, five, very, very nice way to kind of escape that stable degree until you resolve back to it on that fourth note. And then just in general, like, yeah, this intro implies the A minor. So we expect for this piece to be an A minor and to start an A minor. And then at the very end here of the intro, we get A major. So you get this introduction of the C sharp at the very end, which kind of gives it a uplifting sound. So we get this and then finally we get this A major sound, right? And so now we're like, what's gonna happen? And this is what holds us to suspense, because we're not exactly sure what's coming next. And then we hear this single violin note on the A. So is it going to go to D minor? Is this going to stay in A minor? We don't really know until we really hit this next chord, or the very start of this A section. So I wrote here, the melody starts on A, and as soon as we hear the next chord, so this resolution, A resolves back down to the D. So the dominant goes to tonic. Okay, so then now we know that we hear a D minor chord on the bottom. So we hear a tonic chord, And so this note on the top must be the dominant because it's do, so, do, re, mi, fa, so, right? So the A, which might have been the tonic note, is now the dominant note of D minor, or the fifth note of D minor. So, and we get this B flat, which is the sixth, which is very nice. It overreaches the dominant just a little bit, so it's like reaching for something a little bit extra, and then we resolve back down. Now, okay, now this is so special because, we're in the key of D minors, and we get a G minor chord, C major chord, F major chord. Okay, so in the context of D minor, I could have written 4, 7, 3, but more appropriately, we can describe this as a 2-5-1 of F major, because anytime you see this chord progression right here, 2-5-1, the 1 is basically your key, whether it's temporary or it's for the entire piece of music. Anytime you see this progression of one chord going up a fourth, going down a fifth, this is a 2-5-1. And F major is very special because it's actually the relative major of D minor, which just means that it's the major version of the D minor scale and shares the same key signature. So it's also a B flat in the scale, because the D minor scale, that sixth note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a B flat. But in the F major scale, it's the exact same keys that we're playing. It's just that we're starting on F to F instead of D to D. So now the fourth note of the scale is B flat instead of the sixth note, where we would be in the D minor scale. Okay, so it's a very, very seamless transition. So it's almost like, if we consider the 1 chord as being part of F major, then the D minor chord is actually a 6 chord in the key of F, right? So in this case, I'm just going to leave it as 1 because the piece, or this theme, really starts in a tonic feel. So we get this D minor feel, but then you get this G minor, which is the 2, 5 going to 1, right? And F major is the 6th chord of D minor, so then we resolve back to 1. Again, we get a 2. So we get this D in the melody rising up to the C, which is a minor 7, super strong. Again, this 2-5-1. Now we got this 4-5-1. So this is just an entirely classical progression, 4-5-1. Then he could have just easily done another 2-5-1. 4-5-1 here and ended on D minor. But instead he wanted to go to do an deceptive cadence. So 4, 5, and instead of going back to 1, we go up to 6. And it's very seamless because the melody note, which is a D, is the tonic note of the D minor chord, but it's the 3rd of the 6th chord. So both of these chords contain the D, which is which is really cool in the scale. So let's just do that one more time. Oops. Goes down to D, and then we get this, we resolve to the 6, but now we come back down to the 5, and then we're going to sink back down to the 4. 5. Now he teased us, but now he gives us the proper resolution. So now he repeats the A section, which I should have notated here, but I didn't. And it's basically the same progression, so. Oops. And we get this deceptive cadence again. Okay, so now we come to this B section, which is the development. So you see here, the B section starts with 1, so goes to 4. And all the while, we stay with D. So the D is actually a pedal note, because among all of these chords, the D stays on the bottom for all of them. And it works because D is one of the notes in the 4 chord, or the G minor chord, right? So on this chord, I'm still playing D in the very bottom. And then, let's see, what chord do we have here? Right, so we had this D minor, or this D on the bottom the whole time, but at the very end here, we actually go down to a B flat in the bass, and then the rest of this chord is a 5/7 flat 5 of 5, which basically means if we're in the key of D minor, then the D is the 1, right? So if we go up to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be A minor. So then if I do, so by the way, this little V here represents that A minor chord, okay? So if I find the 5/7 of the A minor chord, then that would give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A regular 5/7 chord is E, G sharp, B, and D. But if we flat the 5, we go from B down to B flat. It's a very ambiguous sound, like what's about to happen? It's almost kind of a dark, mysterious sound. So if we invert that, we get this G sharp on the melody and the B flat in the bass, which resolves really nicely down to A in the very next section, or the C. Okay, so that's a very special chord there. I should have made that a lowercase. And if you take a look at this, the progression is essentially identical to the B section, but now it's just an A minor. So this 5/7 flat 5 of 5 is basically a transition chord into the key of A minor. So now we're set in A minor, and we're going to stay in A minor until the rest of the piece. Awesome. So how does it go? Oh yeah, it goes like. And then the most important chord here, and I should have actually, this is actually not a 5. This is a B major chord. So this would be the major 2, because in the key of A minor, the B chord is a B minor chord, not a B major chord. So instead of writing major 2, I should actually write this as a 5 of 5. And if we think about that, the key of A minor, if we go up to the dominant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's E major or E minor. And if I go up a fifth from there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get this B major. So the dominant of E minor is B major, basically, if we use the harmonic minor scale. I don't want to go into too much theoretical terminology here, but this is essentially a secondary dominant. And so the B major contains that D sharp in the very middle that resolves very well up to the E in the A minor chord that comes back. So for this one chord over here. So, and then. And you see here, we have this 1 again, and then 2, 5, 1, but now it's 2, 5, 1 of C major. Again, we're in no sharps and flats, so this is very, very comfortable, very clean, very nice sound. Now notice here, instead of using 4, 5, 1, Williams decides to use a 2 half diminished 7, which is a very common chord. And this basically sounds like this. So it's built with a diminished triad first, B, D, F, and then you add an A on the top. This is your half diminished 7. So there's our 2 half diminished 7 to 5, 7 to 1, and then we get this. We would expect to go to 1, but no, he doesn't give us that. You go to the 6th chord, which is F major, and then it goes back down to 5, and now we get this 4, 7, or the 4, 5, 1, just 4 minor 7, so that would be D minor 7, goes to E major, goes back to A minor, which is the 4-5-1 there. And then finally, we have the A one last time, not the entire thing, but just a little bit of it. And then I think it was like, actually, let's listen to that a little bit at the end. Yeah, there we go. That's that 4 there. And listen to how far this interval is. Okay, so how far is that? Well, that it goes from an E to a G. So if we go from E up a minor third, that would be a minor third, right? But if we take that G and go up an octave, then E to E is an octave. You go up a ninth, you go up to the 10th. So this is actually a minor 10th. So any interval that's really larger than an octave will sound very expressive, and the ear will pick it up right away because it's a very distinct sound when you have these compound intervals that just expand past the octave, because the ear is so used to hearing intervals that are less than an octave, you know? And then let's see what else we get here. So we're still in the 4 chord. And the violin's just going down the A minor scale there. Now we have our 2/2 diminished 7, so a very ambiguous sound. Oh, there's the... Okay, so here, what did we write? We wrote 7 diminished. So in the key of A minor, that would be going down to the leading note, G sharp, B, and D. So a very depressing sound, very sad sound. Right here. Right there. And then back to the 4, down to the 5, settle, resolve to the 1. And then the harp just tinkles up. There's that A right there in the harp. Beautiful. So if you don't really know this theme, please listen to it a few times. Feel free to go over, these notes as well. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. So in terms of the chord progression, it's actually not overly complex. Williams has a very unique gift of presenting us these melodies and harmonies that work so well together and don't overwhelm the listener. We just sit back, appreciate, and just admire what like his method of construction. So it's something that really special and quite unique to him, actually. A lot of today's music is less melodic, or at least less harmonically interesting, Here you can see there's chord changes happening all over the place. We can't really say the same thing about today's music as much. So this is one of those classics that is, treasured because of its iconic melody. Simple melody, but the use of those larger intervals really attracts the ear, and those constant 2-5-1s I think really has a strong pull, and takes us out of the minor every now and then and brings us into the relative major to just give us that sense of happiness, even though this is not really a happy theme, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that is the Schindler's List main theme. Thank you so much for watching. A beautiful, beautiful piece of music. I really, really love this one. And yeah, thank you so much. And in the previous video, I mentioned that I had this orchestral, kind of like 10 tips to a clear orchestral sound. So if you're an orchestral producer or a composer making that kind of music, feel free to download that. It's in the description below. Just check that out, and hopefully it can help you with some of your music. And feel free to ask any questions if you have them. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video, everybody. I look forward to it. All right, have a good day, guys. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.